Now, breaking news.
We send this contract to you because we know it breaks records. We know it will change lives. But what happens next is up to you all.
Good evening. I'm Shayna Humphreys. Thank you for joining us on this very busy night. We begin with that breaking news in the auto workers' strike. Ford and the UAW have reached a tentative agreement to end the strike after 41 days. We have team coverage from the picket lines to UAW headquarters. Let's go there first to Andres Gutierrez. Andres, I want to remind our viewers, we are only talking about Ford here. This deal does not include GM or Stellantis. So what do we know right now about this tentative deal with Ford?
Well, Shayna, before the strike began, Ford was offering a 9% pay increase. They are now offering 25% under this tentative agreement. That is if the members do approve the contract. There's a whole process to that. We'll explain in a moment. But anyway you look at it, this is a historic deal.
For months, we've said that record profits mean record contracts. And UAW family, our stand-up strike has delivered.
A major breakthrough coming on the 41st day since the first wave of UAW workers at the Big Three hit the picket lines.
We told Ford to pony up, and they did. We won things nobody thought was possible.
Under the tentative agreement, workers at Ford will get a 25% raise. 11% of it kicks in at ratification. Throw in the restoration of the cost of living adjustment, and that puts the overall pay increase at over 30%, which is more than $40 an hour.
For decades, temps at the Big Three have been abused and exploited. Over the life of the contract, temps will see raises of over 150%.
The deal brokered 2 weeks after the union struck Ford's largest plant, the Kentucky truck plant, then hitting Stellantis' cash cow in Sterling Heights on Monday and GM's Arlington assembly plant on Tuesday.
Ford knew what was coming for them on Wednesday if we didn't get a deal. That was checkmate.
So here's what happens next. On Sunday, the UAW National Ford Council will vote on whether they'll send the tentative agreement to members. If approved, they will host a Facebook Live that evening to go through what's in the deal. Then there will be regional meetings to walk through the contract with leadership, and locals will hold informational meetings to get questions answered. In the meantime,
we are calling on all Ford strikers to go back to work while we vote on our tentative agreement. Like everything we've done in this stand-up strike, this is a strategic move to get the best deal possible.
In a statement, Ford CEO and President Jim Farley said they're pleased to have reached a tentative agreement and wrote in part, "We're focused on restarting Kentucky truck plant, Michigan assembly plant, and Chicago assembly plant, calling 20,000 Ford workers back to work and shipping our full lineup to our customers again."
This agreement sets us on a new path to make things right at Ford, at the Big Three, and across the auto industry. Together, we are turning the tide for the working class in this country.
Now, as all of this does play out in the coming days, the union will send out instruction to Ford workers on what are the steps to return to work. Important to note that this tentative agreement did come the day before Ford is expected to announce their earnings for this latest quarter. As far as negotiations for Stellantis and GM, those remain quiet tonight. We're told that those will pick up tomorrow morning. Reporting live on Detroit's East Side, I'm Andres Gutierrez, CBS News, Detroit.
All right. Thank you very much, Andres. Now Kelly Vaughn joins us live from Local 900 in Wayne, right across from Ford's Michigan assembly plant, where those workers have been on the picket line since the strike began 41 days ago. And they've been there day and night, Kelly. So what was it like when they got the news tonight?
There was a mix of emotions. I would say a lot of excitement, mainly relief. Now, before that announcement was made, the Ford assembly plant workers were behind me across the street on the picket line, as they have been for more than 40 days. But when Fain was set to make that announcement, the group walked across Michigan Ave and came here to the UAW Local 900. Now, they wouldn't let us go inside to listen to the announcement with them, but when the group came out of the building, you could sense that feeling of relief, that visible excitement from many. And I spoke with a number of people who all told me that they are ready to get back to work.
They was just clapping, cheering. No, everybody ready to go back to work.
Sharnice Wagner is a Ford employee and has been off the job for the full 41 days. She has a 2-year-old and says she's ready to get back to normalcy. But many picket lines are still active. At the Stellantis site in Sterling Heights, Antonio Phillips says he hopes the Ford strike ending could mean good news for them in the near future.
Well, my thing is, hey, if they get a good deal, a good tentative agreement with them, then GM and Stellantis, they could go ahead and pattern off of that. And the quicker it's done, the quicker we're back to, working, making money, the company's making money, and we go back to us business as usual.
Now, when I was at that Stellantis site earlier tonight, they told me they're hopeful, but they said they've only been on the strike for just this week, so they have a lot of energy left if their strike continues on for much longer. And I spoke with a lot of people here at the Ford site who told me they were prepared to strike for up to 6 months. So they're grateful that it didn't quite go that far. For now, reporting live in Wayne, Kelly Vaughn, CBS News Detroit.
Yeah, it's a tentative deal for Ford, but it's all not over yet. We will continue following it every day. Thank you, Kelly. Governor Whitmer is responding to the news tonight, saying in a statement, this agreement will put more money into the pockets of hardworking Michiganders while ensuring the company can continue to grow and invest right here in Michigan. Now, again, this is still a tentative deal. It's not official yet. So for more on what happens next, let's bring in former UAW spokesperson Brian Rothenberg. Brian, thanks for joining us again tonight.
Thanks for having me.
So earlier, Andres kind of laid out the process in the coming days, but very important to note that this is not official. This deal does still need to be ratified by the membership, and we know you've been involved in negotiations and deals just like this in the past. So can you give us an idea of what this process is going to be like in the next few days?
Well, you got to remember it's an employment contract, and it is huge. The actual, what they call the white book, is a very thick book. What's going to happen is the council will come in, which is all the leadership from all the different Ford plants. They have to vote to send it to the membership. And then once it goes to the membership, there will be meetings. They'll go through that. They'll go through some highlights, which are actually sort of an explanation in brief form. But they'll also have major meetings with all of the locals. And then people go and vote. And it is, you got to have 50% plus one, and that's when it gets ratified.
Now, we heard some of the UAW leaders saying in Andres' story earlier that they want the workers to report back to work. So how soon could that be? Would that be tomorrow, maybe even tonight?
Well, I think they should check with their local union, and they'll probably have a procedure for getting everybody back there. But I would imagine probably in the next couple of days, they will gradually roll people back in. They have to get the plants running and operating, and there's certain equipment that you have to get up and running and ready, including in the paint shop. But I think these are times where people really they're excited to go back to work, and they really got a very good deal here. It appears we knew that it was going to be a good deal all along because of the companies and how well they were doing, but they have sort of regained a lot that was lost in 2008 during the downturn.
And Brian, based on your experience, what you have seen over the years and what you've seen with this specific strike, do you think that GM and Stellantis are going to fall in line with the Ford deal?
Well, Sheena, it's a little different this time, and that's because of the way it was done. It was sort of public bargaining, which we've never been through before, and they did all three companies at the same time. But I believe what they've done in recent weeks, especially with going after the cash cow plants to try to get things to move, is that they're trying to establish the pattern. So now Ford has a pattern. The other companies will then have to negotiate to fall in line with that pattern, but it makes it easier to bargain that way. Mm-hmm. There's going to be some fighting back and forth, probably a little bit, but I think you're going to see one by one the other two companies come together. That's my hope.
All right, time will tell in the days to come. Brian Rothenberg, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
So So let's continue to put this all in perspective now with the editor-in-chief of Headlight.News, Paul Eisenstein, and automotive news reporter Michael Martinez. Thank you both for being here.
Good to be with you.
You guys have been here a lot in the past several weeks. This is a huge night. We started this week off with this strike expanding. The UAW kind of hitting the companies where it hurts, at least Stellantis and GM. And Mike, you were just here yesterday, and we were talking about how Ford must have been getting nervous. Do you think those aggressive moves earlier this week are what led to this deal?
I think so. And I also think you saw some movement, finally significant movement on the part of the union. Late last night, they had offered Ford a 25% increase in terms of wages for members, and that's something that Ford wanted to do. So they negotiated well past midnight last night, and again throughout the day today until they finally got this deal.
Paul, do you think the members are going to ratify this?
I think there's a very good shot at it. One of the important things for Fain to do was to signal that they were hitting the car makers hardest where it would hurt the most. And by shutting down all three of the most profitable plants, the F-Series, for example, the Ram and the Silverado, they couldn't have really done much more damage without shutting the entire company down. At this point, the workers have got to believe they got everything the companies were willing to give.
Fain said in that video that they won things nobody thought was possible. What was he referring to specifically?
Well, getting back COLA, they didn't get everything they wanted. Let's make it clear. They didn't get the 40% that they once wanted. They didn't get an entire elimination of the two-tier wage structure and so on. So they got a lot, and they'll call it historic, and it probably applies. Certainly the best sort of contract they have gotten since Walter Reuther was running the union.
And it sounds like Ford didn't exactly get everything it wanted. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, Bill Ford said they were at their limit, and clearly they weren't exactly at that limit because we see the deal. What do you think is going to happen, Mike, with GM and Stellantis here?
Well, I think this puts a lot of pressure on those companies. They're going to have to do much of what Ford has agreed to reach a deal. What I think is critical here, though, as part of this tentative agreement, as you've reported, the workers have gone back to work. They are now off the picket lines. That puts a lot of pressure on GM and Stellantis, a lot of incentive rather, for them to get a tentative agreement as soon as possible. You could argue that maybe they would want to wait to see how this plays out and how workers vote at Ford. But now with the prospect of a strike continuing to drain their finances day after day, and Ford going back to work, they're going to want to get this done.
That's tough. What do you think?
Well, let me point out something. This has been a non-traditional round of contract talks from the beginning, even before they went to the bargaining table. Fain calling the automakers the enemy and so on, going to the deadline with all three manufacturers, declaring a stand-up strike limited against all three manufacturers. Now, I want to point out something. Officially, Fain said the strike is over. Not exactly. Yes, it's unusual for them to go back before there's a ratification vote. But I talked with some Ford people tonight, and they told me point blank, it will take weeks before all of their operations are back to normal.
Wow.
They can't turn a switch and suddenly they're rolling out cars and distributing parts and everything tomorrow. This is going to drag out for weeks and continue to cost Ford tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars well into November.
Wow. So as of today, this strike is 1 day longer than the strike against GM back in 2019. Should we read into that at all?
Yeah, I think it does say that it's the longest modern strike. Fain has wanted to put his stamp on the industry in many ways, but more importantly, he also seems to want to put his stamp on labor in general. I really see him positioning the UAW to regain its old position as sort of the top union motivating what's happening across the labor movement. And right now we're seeing more from labor than we have seen in decades. And he's in a position to really start influencing what labor does.
Striketober. Finally, Mike, what are you looking for in the next few days? What are you going to be watching for?
We're going to watch to see what happens with GM and Stellantis. Definitely, I've heard there's meetings set up with those companies as early as tomorrow morning. I think we could see another tentative agreement in the near future here.
Okay, we will be watching. Paul Eisenstein from Headlight.News and Michael Martinez from Automotive News. You guys have helped us out a lot, sharing a lot of insight with us throughout this process. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, we are following the strike very closely as it continues. You can always find the latest at cbsdetroit.com, and we're always streaming on the CBS News app and Pluto TV. We're also following breaking news in the northeastern part of the country tonight. At least 22 people are dead and dozens more are injured after a mass shooting across multiple locations in Lewiston, Maine. That death toll is expected to rise. Police are still looking for the suspected shooter. They posted photos of him online, though, and asked everyone in the area to take shelter. The shooting reportedly began outside of a bowling alley and then continued at a restaurant. Police say a third shooting was reported at a Walmart. Again, at least 22 people are dead and at least 50 are believed to be injured. It is unclear right now how many were injured by gunfire. We will keep you updated on this as we learn more.